The new best model is here, Opus 4.7. It actually looks like a pretty good upgrade. Obviously, it's better at coding, but it also has improved vision, self-verification, and it's supposedly better at UI, making them more tasteful and creative. The downside, though, is that while the cost didn't change, the tokenizer did, so the exact same input prompt could now use up to 35% more tokens, and it also thinks more, so that's even more tokens to burn. There's definitely some really interesting details in this release, and probably a change you want to make to Claude Code now, so let's just jump in, see what's new, and test it out. Now I'm actually going to start with the benchmarks because I kind of lied earlier when I said this was the new best model. It's the best publicly available one, but these benchmarks also include Mythos, the model so powerful that we're not allowed it yet. According to Anthropic, Opus 4.7 is actually testing new cyber safeguards to block requests that indicate prohibited or high-risk cybersecurity uses, and what they learn from that is going to help them work to a broad release of the Mythos class models, so hopefully in the future I can make a video on the Mythos release and how it's the end of software development as we know it. So subscribe if you don't want to miss that one. For now, I'll go ahead and ignore Mythos and focus on the one that we can actually use, which is Opus 4.7, and this has actually made great gains on the benchmarks. Now, I won't go into too much detail on these, and you can pause the screen if you want to read the individual ones. You can see on benchmarks like SWE Bench Pro, it's actually made a 10% leap over Opus 4.6, and on Verified, it's made a 7% one, and that pattern pretty much continues for the rest of the benchmarks, except in cybersecurity, where it actually went slightly down, seemingly related to the safeguards that I mentioned earlier. It seems that artificially keeping this score low to try and save the world or something. I also found a really interesting benchmark in that system card where it appears that the long context performance has seemingly taken a nosedive compared to Opus 4.6 when using a needle in a haystack test, so I'm pretty curious how that's going to impact actual usage over time. Outside of the benchmarks, there's also a few other notable improvements that might even change how you use Claude. The first one is that it's better at instruction following, which actually means that you might have unexpected results with prompts that you've already used before, as older models interpreted instructions loosely or skipped parts, whereas Opus 4.7 is really focused on taking instructions literally, so you might actually have some prompt tweaking to do. Next, it's got improved multimodal support, so it can accept higher resolution images, 3 times that of the older models, so this should make it better at tasks like computer use and data extraction. Its memory use also improved, so Opus 4.7 should be better at using file system-based memory, where it remembers important notes across long multi-session work and uses those to move on to new tasks that as a result need less upfront context. So maybe that will save me a few tokens, which is pretty important now as the next change is to the tokenizer and thinking. Opus 4.7 uses an updated tokenizer that improves how the model processes text, but it also means that the same input prompt can cost up to 35% more tokens, and when you combine this with the fact that Opus 4.7 thinks more at higher effort levels, this model is really going to burn through some tokens. To make this worse, there's also a new extra high effort level, and it's actually set as the default in Claude Code. So I highly recommend you go and test out the various effort levels and find the one that suits you best to see if you could possibly downgrade this without noticing an impact. For comparison, the new extra high effort level uses roughly the same amount of tokens as Opus 4.6's max effort level, and the Opus 4.7 high effort level actually outscores Opus 4.6's max effort level with less tokens used. So if you're already comfortable with what you had before, I'd use that chart to compare because I know for me, I'm probably going to change this to be using the high effort level in most cases. With the TLDR of what's new out of the way, I'm going to burn through my usage and test this. The first thing I'm going to check is it better at UI design? So I gave it a very simple prompt to create a cafe website with an index.html only, and I'm using the max effort level on all of the models I'm testing, so I'm going to try this out in Opus 4.7, 4.6, Gemini 3.1, and GPT 5.4. This is the result that I got back from Opus 4.7, and I think it looks pretty nice. It's got a nice sort of cafe feel to it, it's used a nice font, it's picked up images from Unsplash here. Overall, I can't really complain. It's a pretty simple website, has a nice menu section, everything is actually responsive, and overall, yeah, I'd say it looks pretty good. If we compare this to what Opus 4.6 gave me, you can see it went for a bit of a different style here, but it's got a similar font and a similar menu section, and overall, it's a little bit worse, I would say, just because it hasn't used a nice background here, and this gradient is not a nice switch at all, but still can't complain too much. I'd say Opus 4.7 is only a bit of a step above this. Gemini 3.1, on the other hand, I think gave me my best result. At least this one is my favorite, so let me know in the comments below what yours is. I just really like that it's got this background that doesn't move when we scroll. I think it's done really well with this image section here, here in the R story section. The menu looks similar to the other ones, but again, I think this is nicely laid out, and the same with the footer. So I think 3.1 wins on this one for me. Coming in last place though is definitely GPT 5.4. This just has such a GPT look and feel to it. It loves these sort of cards where it has a nice blur to them, and it's just not a good cafe website in my opinion. It just looks like every other GPT app that I have ever seen. So Opus 4.7 is definitely good at UI, and it will probably handle it even better given some more direction. At the moment on Design Arena, Opus 4.6 actually takes the lead for websites, so I do expect that 4.7 will take its place. Now obviously that test was a pretty simple one, so next I'm going to give them all a more advanced task. You can see here in Claude Code with Opus 4.6, I'm asking for a personal finance management dashboard that offers a detailed overview of an individual's financial health with a load of features that I have in the prompt here, and I'm not giving it any indication of the stack that it should use. It is going to pick all of that and start from scratch. Up first, we have the result of Opus 4.7, and it did this all in a single prompt in around 20 minutes, and my initial reaction is just, wow. This looks really good. The UI is really clean. It's got really nice charts here. Everything is laid out nicely. It uses a good color scheme. And to be honest with you, there's not much that I would improve about this myself. It has done a fantastic job on the UI side of things. And it also has all of the individual pages that I asked for. We can see all of our accounts. We can see our transactions and our budgets. We can't actually add any new budgets at the moment. It seems that that isn't a feature, and the same with the goals, but we are able to add into our goals here, and the numbers do go up, and it does update the backend API which it built, and the same thing goes for if we send money to people as well. So if I just test paying for my Claude Code subscription here, this should send successfully, and I can see it has been sent. And back on the dashboard, my net worth has been updated with that transaction, so everything is working there, and it is using a database on the back end, and we also have it showing up in our recent transactions. Looking through the code that it generated, everything looks pretty good. It used React and Vite for my front end, so the same thing I would have done, and it also used React Router. Maybe I would have used TanStack, but it doesn't really matter. They're both pretty good options. In all of these, you can see everything is laid out neatly. We have all of our individual UI components. Overall, the front end is just pretty well done. The place where I will mark it off for is in the backend, because we are using an Express server. There's nothing really wrong with that, but I would have gone with something like Bun maybe, or Hono, for just how simple this app is. And also the way that it's actually storing this data is all in memory. So if I now shut down the backend service and start it up again, it's going to load in the data from this seed script, and this is just local arrays. It didn't have any database to back this up to. Moving on to what Opus 4.6 gave me, I've got to say straight away, Opus 4.7 definitely did a better job when it comes to the UI design. There's just something about this UI that I don't quite like. I don't know if it's got a bit too much padding, or if it's the fact that it's in light mode, whereas the other one was in dark mode. I just definitely prefer the Opus 4.7 one. Overall, it's got pretty similar components though. You can see we've got the cards with our net worth, we've got our net worth trend graph, the recent transactions, and our financial goals, and we also have the individual pages to track these as well. Besides the UI, we can also test out some of the features, so I'll add a new transaction here. This one is going to be $150 for groceries. It does look like we get an update here, and also back on the dashboard, my net worth updated as well, so it does seem to be working there. One place Opus 4.6 might have actually be Opus 4.7 in the single prompt is that I can add accounts here, so I just added this account, and the same thing goes for the goals and the budget, so I also added the education budget. So it looks like Opus 4.6 added in a few more features, but to be honest with you, I just asked Opus 4.7 to add them in for me. Obviously normally you wouldn't be doing a single prompt. Taking a look at the code, Opus 4.6 went down a similar route with a Vite React application, but one interesting thing that I've just noticed is this is using React 19 and React Router DOM 7, whereas Opus 4.7 went with React 18 and also React Router 6, even though I'm pretty sure Opus 4.7 has the newer knowledge cutoff. Besides that, another win for Opus 4.6 is that it did use a database for the backend, so it will be persisting it. You can see it's using a SQLite one here, and we do have some of the databases, so that's definitely a win. But where it loses is it seemingly used JavaScript for all of this project, whereas Opus 4.7 correctly used TypeScript. Next, we have the result of GPT 5.4, and to be honest with you, I have no idea what it's doing here. This is not a usable UI. It looks really bad in my opinion. Everything is really cluttered. I don't like the font, and I'm not really going to spend much time on this. This just looks way worse than the Claude ones. I can confirm though that it does work when we add in some money, except it just refreshes the entire page as well. It doesn't get much better in the code either. Seemingly GPT 5.4 just didn't want to start a full project from this, so it's just gone with a very simple approach where we just have our index.html, our JavaScript file, and our styles. Then for the database, that's also just a single JavaScript script as well. It's not actually using a database, it's doing it all in memory like Opus 4.7. And again, it's also gone with JavaScript for everything instead of TypeScript. As for Gemini 3.1, I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of issues trying to get this app to run and actually had to send multiple follow-up prompts just because I was curious at what this actually looked like. And it kind of looks exactly like the Opus 4.6 one. I don't know if they have the same training data when they were doing the UI, but it's very similar. And none of these features actually work and none of these tabs are clickable. So Gemini 3.1 probably did the worst, even though 5.4 is up there just because of the way that it created the app. I will say Gemini 3.1 did actually try and take a good approach to this. It actually went with Next.js instead of React Router, which is a pretty good idea because it means you can use the API server routes, and this was a pretty simple app, so I'm not opposed to doing that. But I will say it did use Prisma, where I would have preferred something like Drizzle. These tests honestly surprised me because up until now, I've been a pretty heavy Codex user, and I've moved away from Claude Code, but Opus 4.7 might just claw me back because it had a really nice UI design, and most of the app seemed to work. Obviously, it does come down to the prompting quality, and I was giving quite a vague prompt on the stack. I would normally prompt with the exact things that I want, but still, I am pretty impressed with the result that we got here. I'm curious what you think. What's your model of choice at the moment? Let me know in the description down below. While you're there, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.